This is Mrs. Schultz, and this video is about population pyramids and how to read them and what they mean. We use population pyramids to analyze growth or decline of things like fertility, so how many children are people having in that society, mortality, which is how many people die and what ages do they die, and then also migration in cities. Sorry about that delay. Population pyramid. So here's some information about how to read one. I'm not going to read all the stuff on here, but what you see here is age cohort in the middle. So this is 0 to 4, basically 4, almost 5. This is 5-year olds up to 10-year olds. This is 10-year olds up to 15, et cetera, et cetera. So when you look at like what's the largest age cohort in the United Kingdom in 2010, it was 40-year-olds, 40 to 44, almost 45-year-olds. On the left is where you find males. So this is gender. The left is males, to the right is females. Age all the way to the top, you see the United Kingdom has a relatively high life expectancy because there's still quite a few people alive above like the age of 70 and even some people into 100. And then population usually shown in millions, but sometimes you'll see in thousands or hundreds of thousands in smaller countries. So the United States, we're looking at different age groups. Again, in the middle, the number of people in each age group. So when you talk about the U.S. population in millions being about, 9.8, something like that. This is only 0 to 4-year-olds right here. So 0 to 4-year-olds in the United States in the year 2000 was there were about 9.8 million, and that's boys. So then if you go over to the female side, you're looking, it was about 9.6 million girls, something like that, 0 to 4-year-olds. So population pyramid, we generally consider people who are younger than 20 years old. In some places, we look at younger than 15 years old as the children, and we call these dependents in a population. So under 15, especially, are people who are dependent on other people, and generally they're dependent on the economically active population, which is anywhere between like 15 and 65 years old, or in this pyramid between 20 and 65 years old. And then another dependent population are people generally over 65 years old who are relying on government services like Social Security in order to receive their income. And the people who are paying into Social Security to get their income are the economically active. So in a society, a healthy society, you always want to see more economically active people than you do dependents on either end, because they can provide enough money for the dependents to live. So there's 3 basic shapes to a population pyramid: the triangle, the box, and the cup. In the triangle, this is considered a developing nation. Growth rates are slow. There's a high birth rate and a short life expectancy. So population isn't growing very quickly because people are dying at relatively young ages. In the box, you find low infant mortality, meaning children are living longer, and more children live through childhood. Population growth is still relatively slow, and there's a long life expectancy. And these are countries like Sweden and the United States. And the cup is a country where you find negative growth. There's a low birth rate and a shrinking population and a long life expectancy. So you see low birth rate, life expectancy is very high, and then not a great working age population. Here, you never really see totally equal, but we'll look at some examples. And this is where birth rates are high, life expectancy is relatively low, and because so many children die at relatively young ages and they don't get very old, the population growth is pretty slow. So here's an example. This is Namibia in Africa in the year 1991. You can see a really high birth rate, and you often see this in developing countries. Even in the United States, 7,500 years ago, people like my grandmother had 11 brothers and sisters. People had a lot of babies because they didn't expect their babies to live for very long. And also, there wasn't as great of accessibility to any kind of birth control. So you see in developing countries high birth rates, and then population really starts to drop off even by the age of 20. And then by the time you hit like 95, there's almost nobody. And population again starts to drop off more in the mid 50s. People are dying more quickly. In the box, this is an example of a box. This is Norway. I'm not sure what year, but you can see a high working age population, relatively low birth rate. Birth rates are shrinking, and a fairly high life expectancy. In the cup, you see pretty severe drop off in birth rates, and you see this in some. Sorry about that. You see this in some more like highly developed countries and places like Japan, where women are choosing careers over marriage and childbirth. They're not having very many children. There's a fairly decent amount of working age population and really, really high life expectancy in Japan. It's the highest in the world. But what Japan is finding now is that there aren't enough working age people to take care of these high life expectancy populations here. We'll talk more about that later. So here, shape is determined primarily by the birth rate. So this is a country where population is in decline. This is relatively stable. Birth rates sort of even with the other ones here. Population is growing here. Higher birth rate and rapid growth can be seen here. What I'd like you to do right now is pause the video. I've put a link to the slideshow on the website, and so you can go to this slide on the slideshow, and you're going to click on this link and watch this. It's a 5-minute video. I have a note sheet for you to fill in. I'll put that also on the website or link it right here. And please turn in the note sheets when you're done, but just take 5 minutes to watch this because it's a description of population pyramids. That's a really good one. So pause this and come back when you're done. Okay, what we're going to do now is look at some examples of different cities and why their population pyramids might look the way they do. So Ann Arbor, Michigan, this is an example. Maybe you can figure it out. University of Michigan is here. It's an example of a university town. So you see the largest population in ages 20 to 24 years old. Buffalo County, South Dakota. This is an Indian reservation, and you can see relatively high birth rates, although they're slowing down, and then a drop off in population. And this is and life expectancy isn't incredibly high here, but what you see here, this is primarily because people leave the reservation to go live in more urban areas or other places to find jobs. Fort Bragg, North Carolina, you might have heard of. This is a military base. So you see a really large population of males in particular in this age group, although a higher population of females here than you do earlier on. Leavenworth, Kansas, this is a home of a famous prison. So you see you see the inmate population here. Manhattan in New York, this is an incredibly expensive place to live. So you won't find, and it's not a place where a lot of people want to raise their children. So you won't find a lot of children in this population, but you do find kind of working age once they start to get a little bit of money, the late 20s and 30-year-olds who like to move to Manhattan because it's an exciting place to live. Northampton, Massachusetts is home to a women's college. So again, you see here this skewing because of the women who go to school there. Punta Gorda, Florida, like many other places in Florida, is a retirement community. So you see this is where the older population comes in. There aren't a lot of people who raise children here, but a lot of elderly people live here. Springfield, Illinois is the capital of Illinois. It's also another university town. But this is represented by, well, okay, it's not a big university in Springfield. It's a capital. And this population pyramid is meant to just depict a sort of typical average town in the Midwest in the United States. So you can see we have a relatively high life expectancy. We know women live longer than men on average. Fairly decent working age, not a lot of dependents. Birth rate is pretty stable. And here's what Colorado looks like. This was 2000 versus 2010. It's probably changed quite a bit since then too. But you can see we're either having kids here or moving here with small children like I did. So high birth rate or rate of having young children, pretty high life expectancies, and a decent sized working population. So the next thing I'm going to have you do is the population data case study. So you can look for that on the website. Oh, and one more thing. I'd like you to take a look, and you can find this link on the website, at the population pyramids in the story map that's above. So I will click on that so you can see it. Just ignore all my tabs here. And this population map, it's a story map, and it shows population pyramids specifically from places in Latin America. And here's also some United States population. So here's, for example, this is Guatemala in 2015. And you can click through the pictures here, and it says as of the year 2015, Guatemala's population will decline after the late 20s. So it just gives you some information. This is what they predict Mexico, for example, is going to look like in 2050. Um, really declining birth rates and high life expectancy is increasing. This is really pretty high. Good working age population, but this will decrease as these age cohorts move up. There'll be more people here, fewer people to take care of them in the working age population. So this is interesting. Take a look at this because we'll work with some of these pyramids a little bit later. So thank you, and turn in any notes you have when you're done.